it's quite rare that I'll even look at a vehicle like today's one, and that's because I often find the lower tier vehicles kind of boring, but this one is something that I actually found a little bit interesting, and it is the season pass vehicle at rank 25. So I'm sure that by this point, since the season's been out for 3 weeks, that you've more than likely been able to pick up this one. If you play the game even semi-regularly, you're probably at around, rank 30 or something like that. But what makes the Panzer IV-H or Hydro better than the tech tree equivalents? Well, I mean, it literally is statistically better, and it wouldn't be like Wargaming to have a premium tank that's better than the tech tree version, would it? And we're not even going to look at the Panzer V4, since that thing is just on another level. And essentially, let's have a look at the Panzer IV Hydrostat. So this is a vehicle that has the same sort of statistics as the Panzer IV-H. I mean, they share a very similar name, the Panzer IV Hydro versus the Panzer IV-H. And essentially what the Panzer IV Hydro has is that it has increased mobility over the tech tree version. It has increased hit points over the tech tree version. I'm starting to think that this is maybe not so balanced after all, but although you're seeing that the view range, the concealment and stuff like that is slightly different, that's primarily because we've got equipment on the vehicle. So take all of that out and they are basically the same. So it has the same view range, it has the same still concealment, and essentially in the background between the two vehicles, you have, of course, got some extras, and that is that this tank only plays up against tier 6s, so it has preferential matchmaking. So for those of you wanting to seal club down at these lower tiers, you can potentially use this if you're not wanting to truly seal club in something like a Panzer V4, which has basically double the hit points of the tier 5 medium tank from the German line, and of course has the same gun and damage per minute, and can go 66 kilometers an hour. Anyway, the Panzer IV Hydro is a vehicle that I've been playing. We played a few games to see whether or not that this is even worth your time, and for me personally, I actually found it kind of interesting. It was definitely a tank worth giving a go, and it's, looks pretty cool. So let's jump into some games. We ran it with essentially advanced loader, we have ran it with advanced optics and ventilation to just improve the tank as much as possible in all areas, so that it's a bit more flexible than what you'd expect. It also has 10 degrees of gun depression, so it's kind of good. Accuracy kind of sucks though, 0.37, so yeah, and you can't take vertical stabilizers either on this one, so yeah, kind of sucks. But of course, when you have run it with a fully trained crew, you can see right here, we'll just add a random one in here, you can get a much better accuracy down to 0.31, which is pretty much more than enough for most things. And yeah, let's have a look at whether or not this thing is truly as good as the Panzer IV-H, the tech tree, and if it's actually better. I'll jump in right now. So I really enjoyed playing the Panzer IV-H or Hydro. And essentially what made me interested in it is because it has this fast fire rate. I actually really like tanks that have a fast fire rate, just because you feel like you can impact the game, you can go for tracking shots, etc. And that's really something I always enjoy when playing World of Tanks. And it's one of the kind of rewarding bits about if you have good aim and you're constantly firing with good accuracy, you can really ruin some people's days, and that's what I'm all about, when you're seeing all of these Panzer V4s, the broken vehicles of tier 5, clubbing around, the T67s and the Hellcats at tier 6, since this can meet tier 6s. Yeah, it's always nice when you start removing them. But yeah, first tank we find is the little pesky tier 5 artillery, the Bishop, which is, yeah, I mean, a nightmare in itself at this tier. But essentially, get up into this little bush. We've got good view range and decent concealment, considering we are pretty big of a kind of medium tank, although more like a heavy, really, when you think about it. But essentially, we managed to find and spot some of the opponents, and that's because we went with the view range build. And down at these low tiers, if you can get the view range advantage over people, it means that you are going to be so much better, because not everyone has view range, and the fact that some of the equipment and stuff like that can boost up your view range massively. Means that tanks like this can become so much better, and often you can use the view range to remain undetected, deal damage whilst not even being able to be spotted. And because most people down at these lower tiers don't particularly have the most experience within the game, you are going to be able to remain undetected, and no one's going to blind fire you essentially either. So yeah, I mean, it's like a win-win in all scenarios. So I always usually run the camo, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense with regards to like getting the most damage per minute or stuff like that. So yeah, camo can be a really big thing, and if you incorporate it into your games, you'll have really good ones consistently, and that's kind of what we were aiming for. But either way, I'm realizing I'm not really doing a whole lot, so we want to try and at least move to try and get some damage. So we come over to this side, and we're going to be going for all of these vehicles. Now I decide that, yeah, my standard rounds just aren't quite good enough with only 110 pen, so we load the premium runs, enabling us to basically pen all of these tanks if we can manage to hit the actual armor as opposed to the mantlets. And you can see here the tier 6 vehicle, the T-34-85, which is a very good vehicle. It's just getting rinsed, and this is the DPM coming into full force here. I love how quickly these tanks fire and how quickly you can retrack an opponent, etc. And now you can see us going after this VK3001H, so this is the heavy tank, true at tier 5, so it's essentially us but as a heavy tank essentially, and we plow quite a few rounds into him, removing most of his hit points, and there you go, picking up the second enemy of the game, 1200 damage. And from this position, this is actually a really nice defensible position. It does kind of lack if you get spotted, so it's one of those where you have to be very careful when you do come up here, because you can get farmed from the left. So yeah, you don't want to be getting up here and getting spotted essentially, and if you do, you want to be pulling back straight away. So that can be used in any of your games regardless of if you're playing tier 5. This position is nice to get a bit of view range, but I wouldn't want to be coming here in like a true heavy tank or anything like that. And as soon as you get spotted, you can get hit from the hill, you can get hit from their base, and the campers over in H5 and 6, where you've got the buildings out on the side, and obviously you can get hit in the side from the people on the opposite hill to where we are in F7, I want to say. So yeah, there's quite a few positions you can get hit from, so you don't want to get spotted there, but a handy position to know in that scenario. But either way, we're now pushing forward. It looks like we're going to win the game. There is just an inordinate amount of people on top of the hill pushing towards that one medium tank, so I'm almost guaranteed that we're going to win that flank. So what's the best thing to do? Well, it's to try and find all of the rest of the vehicles over here, and we find a P43 BIS who's just sat there, and we take a big old chunky hit, and I'm getting a little bit greedy. I should have probably just continued to move down, but yeah, the greed coming in really badly there. And unfortunately we take one from the T67, which is, yeah, the little seal clubber of that tier. But either way, we managed to spot all of these vehicles. We spot the P43, which gives us a little bit of assistance. And at this point, I'm just trying to play that assistance game, and that's what this tank can do with that view range. And of course, having that view range advantage down at this tier allows you to spot things like the T67, which are the little rats of this tier, along with any of the others that might be camping at the back. Now we find the T67, place one into him. Can we get the second one in? Not quite, unfortunately, and maybe we can get the final shell in. Yes, we can, and we track him. And can we get the final one? Yes, and there he goes, back to the garage, Mr. Seal Clubber Skyball. But either way, 3,100 combined damage in this little small vehicle. Not usually overpowered, but you know what is a little bit overpowered is of course artillery, and you know, it's always fun when you get removed by the skillful players in the game, the RNG dependents, the artillery, and yeah, finished off. But yeah, the SU-100 on the enemy team doesn't last for a whole bunch of time, and he'll get removed in just a second. But I definitely really enjoy playing tanks like this. Obviously, there are some really unbalanced things down at this tier, so you got things like the Panzer V4 to contend with, which if you're one-on-one, it's just not likely you're going to be able to come out with the result. But the tank itself, this one here, is actually a pretty strong vehicle at this tier, so it's definitely able to hold its own against some vehicles. And yeah, you basically want to be going for tracks against the Panzer V4 and hoping that they bounce. And of course, because Panzer 5.4s, usually just YOLO, you'll be wanting to at least try and get some teammates to come, and hopefully they'll be able to get in and make up that extra health point difference that you do have between the two vehicles. I think it's about 300 hit points more on the Panzer 5.4 as opposed to this vehicle, which in its own right has a decent amount of hit points at this tier. But there you go, a decent result and a little showcase of what this tank can do. But there is still one more replay that we have in this thing that I want to show. So the next replay is on Murovanka. And this is one where, yet again, we are not top tier as with the previous one. So we have to be very careful. Things like the SU-100 that have the high alpha damage that can literally take like 3/4 of your hit points in one shell. There's quite a few of those sorts of tanks at this tier. Things like the KV-2 are going to rinse you because they can pen you basically with their AP, and it has more than enough damage to take you out from full health, which is always good. You know, everyone complains about the high tier vehicles being overpowered, you know, things like the AVRE, but I think actually tier for tier, like in terms of like how boring some tanks are, things like the KV-2 which can remove you. I'm not going to say the KV-2 is overpowered, I'm just saying like there are a ton of vehicles that are like super annoying at the tiers that will just basically ruin your day. You'll see it with things like SU-100, which is basically undetectable and has high alpha that can basically one-shot some vehicles at tier 5. Definitely all of the vehicles at tier 4. And I mean, even things like this is capable of being really, really good, and you've got much better stats than the tech tree equivalents, and even tanks that are of the same kind of vehicles, and it's also preferential. So it's like, if you had that at tier 10, I'm sure people would be very, very not happy bunnies, shall we say. Either way, we managed to deal a bit of damage. We've got a KV-1S who's now YOLOing towards us. Don't quite know how he's managed to get as far as he has so far, but I guess maybe no one had spotted him before. So we're going to just take this bit. I'm thinking, well, he's YOLOed through the middle of the map, so he's probably not going to be the most knowledgeable player in the game, I guess, since it's not a great position. We've got a light tank who's now YOLOing. Seems like at the lower tiers, obviously, people YOLO a lot more. I'm not surprised, but it is annoying. And now you've got this KV-1S that has that derp gun, and of course it reloads pretty quickly, and I'm thinking maybe we can get a few more in him before we get taken out. And of course, he doesn't manage to pen us, which is good. Now we're having to load those premium rounds to be able to pen him through the lower plate. I want to make sure we can get him out of the game, and we leave him on 6 hit points. And there we go, we managed to finish him off. But there is still plenty of damage left in this game, and having picked up 1500 combined damage, yeah, not a bad one. But of course, being very wary of those artillery pieces and pulling back. It was like one of those dodging. It's like playing dodgeball, I guess, with the artillery coming in. If you get hit, yeah, you're out. And you're seeing here the little Burt. If you get caught by one of those in this sort of thing, yeah, you're going to find the majority of the game you're going to end up being tracked. And that's no fun for anyone involved. But we're down by 2 vehicles at this point in the game, so it's not an easy win. So I don't want to be doing anything rash. I want to win these games. You know, we want quick, easy, winnable games. We don't want to be getting steamrolled at this sort of tier. So we're going to hold back a little bit for a minute, and then we'll assess what needs to be done. You know, some people will just YOLO, you can guarantee it. And of course, the first tank we managed to find is this Turan 3 prototype, and you can see him just managed to catching his track, but unfortunately he does have a repair kit, and there is one of the pesky vehicles, or 2 of them, because the M4A3E8, or the EZ8, has the derp gun, or can have a derp gun, so it's not particularly the most fun to get hit by, and it has heat rounds, which are usually just pay to win heat rounds that can be that can basically pen everything at this tier if they do manage to hit you. So not particularly the most fun, but we do manage to find ourselves a Skoda T25, who we hit a few times, and need to hit this turret, but of course we bounce off of him, and then he manages to flick onto us, and then we of course only track him, and then he manages to get another shell onto us. So yay, brilliant, exactly what I wanted when I was trying to take this guy out, and then we don't even manage to finish him off. Gutted, absolutely gutted. But either way, we've pulled back the score now. It's 7 against 4, and it looks like we're going to be able to win. And this is what this tank can do. It's definitely one that is capable within the game. I've realised that this Turan 3 could be the end of me, so I'm going to pull all the way back and come over to this side, and therefore, you know, he's not just going to be able to YOLO into us and take me out without any real repercussion, so we want our teammates to help us. He manages to get hit by the artillery piece, which is nice, and we were the last one to spot him and the only person to spot him, so a bit of assistance damage for me. And now it's time to see if we can get some more damage onto this guy before he gets removed. But don't worry, the little pesky artillery piece on our team finishes him off for the last remaining bit of his hit points. So nearly 3,000 combined damage again at this tier. So we've dealt 3 times the hit points of our vehicle, or just under. And it is very consistent. It's able to do it. If you just basically sit back and you can find a few opponents during the game where you can just manage to retrack them, keep them tracked, or do stuff like that, you'll be able to get this assistance damage and actual damage pretty easily. And I'm a bit wary of where this tank destroyer is. It is, of course, a Hellcat, the little broken piece of Seal Club. Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to take out, but unfortunately not. And there is just that light tank. But either way, really good game. Hopefully it showcased this little tank and why you might want to take it out a few times. I'm not expecting a ton of you to jump out over in joy about this tank, but it's not a bad one. It was an interesting one to take out, and I think it was definitely worth showcasing, and it's one of the ones that I've rarely played down at this tier, so it was interesting to actually give it a go. And certainly if I play it down at this tier, it's only for a few games because we're grinding through a vehicle that I don't yet have. But either way, hopefully you enjoyed this video and saw a interesting bit down at lower tiers than what we usually do. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully you did enjoy, and if you want to check out some of the other Season Pass tanks, I will leave a link on screen to the gameplay and tank reviews playlist where we've recently done them, and to the latest video in the Season Pass tank series. But other than that, I hope you did enjoy, and I hope you'll join me back in the next one, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.